Right, so I wanted to talk about the lecture this past week on the 28th about really getting outside of the office and, getting into the client's environment, which is cool that we talked about it this week because in another class I talked about multisystemic therapy, or I presented on multisystemic therapy and just specifically, just in general, but also the home-based form. And just I think it's so good to be aware of the environments that the client is navigating. And I think part of really growing in our understandings of that as clinicians and really doing good information gathering is meeting the client where they're at. So not just physically, but talking with other people in the client's life, for instance, if it's a student, talking with principals, teachers, family members, community members. I think there's just so much more that's gained through that. And I think in some ways, and from what I've gathered from multisystemic therapy, this is really important too, but I think a lot of this information gathering, it builds a bond and really a kind of an level of empowerment for the client that is different from, giving the client a voice, but I think you give the client a voice through, conversing with and gathering support from other members in the client's life. You build that community around them, and it's kind of your way, and I think there's definitely an art to it in that you don't micromanage, but through doing that, you definitely present evidence, and you show that this community is there for that client, that they're willing to advocate for them, they're willing to work on behalf of them, and that it's not, the progress that they make, it's theirs too. They definitely make that progress, but they don't do it alone. And I think that, like I talked about in a separate vlog a couple of weeks ago, it's important that the client sees themselves as integrated in a system, that they are, yes, they're an individual that is to some degree autonomous and can make their own decisions and feels empowered to do things in their life, but they also feel empowered enough to call upon others for help. And I think we model that as clinicians when we converse with those people in that person's life that can have influence. So it's just kind of cool to think about. And we also talked about that countertransference, and through that information gathering between, the client and the clinician, that you really start to build that therapeutic bond. I think there's a different therapeutic bond that is built through information gathering through different parties. But I don't know. I also think about the fact that you can do a little too much of information gathering from other parties in a way that might make the client feel powerless. I think there's a balance of, respecting the client and their personal space and the roles and the abilities that they have. But I think there's also an art. There's a balance in, making sure the client isn't just acting in isolation and isn't feeling like nobody's really there for them in this process. So I think it's important to just be very sensitive to that and to be aware of, which sources in this client's life might not be the best to contact or to communicate with. They may not feel as comfortable or with that. There are other, there are just so many nuances to that. And I think that's part of, being cross-culturally competent in that information gathering, of understanding, what is the contextual fit of this client? Who are they as an individual? And what would be best for them? And just sometimes just asking them, would you be comfortable if I reached out to so-and-so, about, doing this progress with you, working in this, therapy with you. So I don't know, it's cool to think about how different ways that we can empower the client that are not just that bi-directional relationship, but are a communal relationship. And I think with individuals that might come from more family-oriented backgrounds, that can be really empowering too. Okay, thanks.